Welcome, everybody. I'm Carolyn Busey-Eberly. I'm founder of Mind Energy Body Transformation, and this is the webinar to address some of those really deep clinical questions, life questions that can really stump you, can really be so intense that it's nice to have support on how to address them. So, my dear beloved former graduate, and master's student in counseling, Heather Reed, is with me again. Heather, it's just so fun having these talks. I'm so excited to share this time with you and to share the lessons that we've learned over the years to help others too. So welcome, welcome. At the end of the webinar, I'll give you some free bonuses too, so please stay to the end. And I want to tell you about some really amazing opportunities that if you live in the general area, you can attend, and if you're from out of town, you can also take advantage of. So we'll talk about that a little bit later if you want to take this work even deeper. So we are going to be discussing things from a clinical evidence-based perspective, but also from a spiritual embodiment of our wholeness, connecting to our bigger self in order to help resolve some of these issues. I'm really about teaching clinicians and people not to re-wound when they embrace difficulty or life challenge. And that's really the crux of it. So if you're a practitioner, this is the place for you. If you're somebody that wants to awaken, embody more of the wholeness, this is the place for you. And I welcome all of you. And please, if for some reason you think somebody would benefit from this, I will give you a link and you can share the link to them afterwards. So welcome, welcome. All right, so I think we're just going to jump in. What do you say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think as someone who works with clients, like you said, getting my master's in counseling, that skill of preventing the re-wounding in clients is very important, not just for counselors, but for any body workers.
Right, right.
That's something that I've learned is being able to assess when a client is going into the trauma and merging with trauma.
And how important it is to prevent re-wounding. And I find that if you can track that subtle energy level of transformation when somebody is feeling it in a way that creates the healing it versus that replays the old story, then you prevent re-wounding. So no matter what issue we're talking about today, I'm really going to invite you to get support, contact me, or find somebody where you can actually track that quantum level of reality, of the energy through the body, of the nervous system, to see if when somebody you're supporting is re-wounding or awakening, deepening into their gifts, actually transforming. Again, I'm against process work because processed food kind of isn't healthy. And once you understand that quantum reality level, processed emotions can really hold you back. And I want to really change the world. My passion is people should not be re-wounded by the difficulties they face, no matter how traumatic they are, that there is a better way. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is, what is that better way, and how do you address really deep, profound issues in a way that supports your client in transforming instead of just processing the emotions. Right?
Right. I would say before your certification program, I couldn't really assess when a client was transforming their energy or if they were just re-traumatizing themselves. Mm-hmm. And now after certification, I can tell immediately when a client is just re-traumatizing, re-wounding. They're in the processing, which maybe they learned before from other body workers or healers or counselors. And so, it's a very important skill to learn, especially as we start talking about these really deep issues that people sometimes have come up in their lives.
In some of the schooling I've done in the past, I felt like I was re-traumatized by the programs I attended. Like one school, they had us in the second year just hit and be angry And I was so lost in the trauma of the anger and the fear of the anger. I wasn't told, why am I feeling these things? How is it helpful to feel these things? And so part of what we'll talk about today is why, not if feeling is healthy, but how to feel to make it healthy.
Well, you had that exact same experience with my
Yeah.
training in meditation, that they were all about feeling is healing. But actually, what ended up happening was that the grooved patterns in the brain of the trauma are just reinforced.
Right.
You know, there has to be the transformation bit, not just that feeling is healing. Like you said, it's how is the feeling.
Yes. So let's move on to some of the questions that people emailed me to discuss. And they're really heartbreaking questions, some of them. One of them was around a death, right? So this...
When a loved one dies, how do we move forward?
How do you move
How
on?
work with grief.
And how do you move on and not feel guilty about enjoying life again? I mean, I think that was the essence of what she was asking me. And it was, how do you accept the death? So, you know, in the olden days, they followed Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you know, the stages of grief. And now they've kind of updated them. So from a clinical perspective, they talk about different tasks on how you move through the grieving process. The task of acceptance of the death. The task that maybe there could be a possibility of moving on. Just a possibility. Can you at least open to the possibility that your life could start up again? And I want to just bring in what I think is always the worst scenario for me. What if one of my kids died? I mean, I could probably handle my husband dying. I wouldn't want to, but that would be easier than if one of my babies died, right? How would I move on? How would that turn into a lesson of awakening and embodiment of my spirituality? So that's the third task. What could there be to replace the wound of the grief of the loss of that individual? Could there be something that you can learn and gain from that deep tragedy? And those are a quick summary of how to move on from grief. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the intention, because when I felt into this dear beloved client who emailed me this question to discuss today, it felt like there was confusion on, should she have the intention of healing from the grief?
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, if you don't have a positive intention to, I call it explorer's mind, explore how to move on, then you'll stay at that edge of rewounding, looping through the pain of the grief. Years can go by and you can still be in that confusion state. And so the confusion state is when the limbic brain kind of takes over and shuts down the higher brain's functioning. And so I would love to just invite everybody to explore what are your intentions? What are your clients' intentions around the challenge they're facing? Is there clarity of moving forward? Is there clarity of letting in a gift from the tragedy? I would almost even start there with almost any question. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, right now what they're teaching, you know, as clinicians go, there's a lot of talk about, is there willingness to change? And they actually have different assessments to use with clients. And I think you're kind of talking to that point, like, what is their intention? And if their intention is not to change, then they don't find that any type of therapy is really very successful. That's
Right.
what they've realized.
It's actually an ethical issue then.
With the client. Because if they're coming in very low on their intention to change, then why is that?
Right.
And to just to start with intention is so important, because that's the first step.
I do think awareness of the problem and intention. In the 5 steps I teach, awareness is the first step. Really looking at detachment and intention as the second step. So I would begin there, and I think there is an ethical issue. If you have a client that keeps coming back and they have no intention to heal, and you don't address the fact that there's this mixed intention, and what support do they really need, then I think it's an ethical issue that practitioners and friends and family need to look at, because you don't want to be an enabler and codependent, but you don't want to abandon them either. It's that middle ground. I don't want to abandon a friend or a client, but I also don't want to be part of the problem, right?
Yeah. So what I've been taught is just to talk about what is the intention. If there is negative intention, then explore that.
Because we all have a part of ourselves that wants to hold us down. It's an old pattern, an old programming, and it's not like we're bad. It's just, can you lean into the pain and transform that part that wants to hold you down? That in the 5 character structures that are body-centered character structured, the clinical term is masochist. I call it the heart-centered. But they can try and hold themselves down and hurt themselves, and that can make a person feel stuck. So getting support, really looking at that. And guys who are watching this, I'll send you a link to take the energy assessment personality quiz, so you can kind of learn more about your energy personality types, and share this with others too.
And talking about the question that you had emailed, once kind of going through that, exploring awareness of the problem, being clear about intention, is that when you start being curious about the lesson? Because I think that was a really important thing that you said that struck me, was that explorer's mind, and just being open to what is the lesson from this incredibly painful event.
Right. If they have moved through the positive intention to the acceptance phase, like they can accept that this has happened, then you move into the curiosity phase of, wow, what does this mean? Is there some possibility that I can use this as a lesson for my own growth? Because in the 5 spiritual laws I teach, one of the spiritual laws is things happen for us, not to us. And as we connect to our bigger self and our wholeness, we can get something out of a misfortune, turn misfortune to gold. Doesn't necessarily bring that loved one, that beloved, back, but we can at least find some more of our wholeness as a result of the tragedy. Because every time I've had a tragedy in my life, I've gotten curious, like, how is this showing up to teach me something, so I can reclaim more of my light, so I can awaken to the quantum reality and be more empowered to create a better life for myself and those around me, right?
So the person who emailed you, do you have a sense from the email where the person is on this process, and
I think
what's
they're in the
helpful
intention
for this
phase.
person that emailed you right now?
They're in the intention phase, yeah. I offered them a free 20-minute session, and you guys, if you're a new client, you definitely, or if I haven't seen you in a while, please, go to my website, sign up for a 20-minute free consult. Let me help you find your tipping point. So I think she's in the intention phase, but if you've gone through the intention phase into the next phase of, acceptance, and then gone to the next phase of, wow, how do I replace this? Is there a gift I can get from this?
Okay.
So sorry, my internet
up.
is kind of on and off. They're doing work in my neighborhood. It's life.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about relationships. You said that someone emailed about breaking up.
Right.
Maybe divorce, maybe not, just or dating. I think you said you had an email that they were talking about that the other person was just falling apart from
Right,
this
right,
relationship.
right. They had
So
broken
talk
off the
a little bit about
relationship.
working with that.
So they had broken off the relationship and they're having trouble moving on. You know, there's that codependency, love addiction, maybe a little bit, where we don't want to leave something that's dysfunctional because we feel bad for the other person. And we might doubt whether we can create something better, right? So that's where I really love to work with a client of you get to choose your reality. You don't have to accept and eat something terrible for fear you won't ever eat again. You know, that could be from a past life. It could be from an ancestral issue. It could be an old pattern based on some message you got growing up as a child. You can empower yourself to move on. And the whole concept that if I move on, and the person I broke up with falls apart, how can I not feel shame or guilt around that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough one because we believe, especially women, you know, that female energy. It may not be women; it could be just the female energy. We don't want to see anybody in pain, right? We just don't want to. And if we do something that leaves somebody in pain, aren't we bad? Isn't that the message we get, that we're bad? And so it really takes a lot of support to give yourself, if it's you, or to give your client, to really see the wisdom that pain is really an energetic portal back to reclaim your wholeness. So if you don't let somebody feel pain, you also don't let them get the lesson. You disempower them. So that boyfriend that was kind of falling apart after she kind of started moving on, he has something to learn and gain from it. You know, in the old days, they would put warriors through an initiation process so they can find their manhood, right? Find their power. I think life is an initiation process, right? There's enough pain here. You don't have to put me through a line and paddle me. You know, every opportunity of hardness or misfortune or when somebody dumps you. Let's say another question I got is a husband was having an affair and she was wondering if she should leave him. I mean, that's a huge question. You know, there's many different ways. An affair is not necessarily a reason to get a divorce. It's more complicated than that. And if there's kids involved, it's more complicated than that. I would bring it back to the codependency issue again. You know, is leaving your partner something that is better for the whole family? Is it better for you? What was the reason for the affair? They've done studies, and affairs, men tend to have affairs not for sex, but because they feel they're not being nurtured and loved and supported. They're not being looked up to and respected. I mean, it's a complicated issue. What do you think?
Actually, it was making me think of the whole Jennifer Garner.
Right.
And her husband Ben Affleck, because there was some talk that he was having an affair with a nanny. And this is actually extremely common. And my friend and I were discussing this, and it's because the nannies are nurturers.
Right.
That's how they're perceived by the husband, because they're taking care of the children, and then they want to kind of buy into that nurturance. So it made a lot of sense with what you were saying. You know, it's a very common pattern.
It
is. And they've done studies on it.
And honestly, over the past, I don't know, decade plus that I've been seeing clients and working with couples in my private practice, I would say the reason why people get divorced is because they're not feeling respected and honored by their partner. They are feeling, I don't want to use the word bitchiness because it's both male and female, but they're feeling attacked by their partner instead of having some really good skills of how do we resolve conflict from our higher selves and not our wounded self. So when I work with a couple, I find I invite them to connect to their bigger self to resolve the conflict and not be in a dysregulated limbic reaction to resolve a conflict. And that when the limbic system takes over and our higher self disappears, we kind of pause and we help each person reconnect to their bigger wholeness. Because you can't transform from defense. And that's what happens when there's attacking going on, because we get dysregulated and we feel really hurt. We wouldn't attack if we didn't feel disrespected and hurt. So yeah, I think there's a way that partners can learn how to nurture each other during conflict.
Yeah, I found that your personality test for the energetic patterns was very helpful with relationships. And when we did the certification program, you actually have people go through to figure out the methods of defense, and then you can learn what methods of defense your partner is using. And that is extremely helpful, I found. And I think other people did also. I mean, it was kind of eye-opening, like, wow, this is what happens when I go into defense, and this is what happens when my husband goes into defense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, have your partners take the energy personality test. I'll send you a link as long as you're signed up for the webinar. Yeah.
Clients too, they can learn what their defense mechanism is. So it's very important to have that awareness of what we're doing.
I do think so. So, just to review, if your partner is having an affair, it deems closer examination to see what is actually causing that. And it's never one person's fault. It can be one person's solution, however, I find. If somebody really comes into their wholeness and starts interacting with their partner from their wholeness, so often that can resolve the issue. And the partner starts meeting you at the same frequency of higher consciousness. It can take 6 months and consistency, but it can really shift the dynamic in a way that's quite profound. I have quite a few students who shifted their marriage and the problems in their marriage. They were thinking of divorce, but they didn't because they shifted that unhealthy reactivity. They no longer attacked it or interacted from defense, and it actually created communication and healing. So, yeah.
Or, I mean, the other person may not shift to meet the higher energy level, and then there's a lesson there also.
There's clarity of bowing, saying goodbye, and moving on to healthier options. Yes, either way, divorce is not a failure. It's an information of where you're going next and what's your next creation. We all want to say this is good or this is bad, and I want to encourage all of you that it's just information, right? And to really get those skills, if you all don't know how to self-regulate back to your higher self throughout the day, reach out. I've got free resources. I've got online resources. I've got an in-person certification training that starts soon. So yeah, reach out, get support, because there is a better way to create your life so the pain doesn't have to rewound you, right? It doesn't have to rewound you.
And so did you have an email from someone about chronic illness, or were we just going to talk about that in general?
Yeah, I got an email with somebody that just got diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
and
okay.
I find a fourth of my practice are people who have chronic illness, and they were just diagnosed with a chronic illness. And I thought, You know, when you're looking at the possibility of dying, it kind of brings things into the foreground that you may have been putting off looking at. When I've had physical issues, I'm more aware of how I'm running my energy through my physical body in a way that isn't as healthy as it could be. You know, where I get enmeshed with the emotions versus using the emotions to awaken more of my wholeness, the subtle, subtle energy frequencies that are old negative energy patterns, old negative personality patterns that can feed illness. And so I thought it'd be useful to talk about how do you support somebody facing the intensity of the fear that comes up when somebody has a cancer diagnosis or a chronic illness diagnosis, and what are some of the hidden beliefs that can subconsciously feed illness and make it worse. Mm-hmm. Do you remember from the training a couple of the negative beliefs that are associated with chronic illness and cancer?
I don't remember specifically. I remember because of the group that I was with, there was a lot of fear around cancer because we had a few people that had personally dealt with the cancer, and so that I just remember that it was a very charged subject.
Right.
So
right.
I was feeding off the energy rather than paying attention to the particulars.
And that's
it's a very deep and charged subject. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's a good example because, you know, when you look at the frequency of energy and your sense of self, if you're lost in the fear, and it's such a charged subject, life and death, a charged subject. If you're feeding off the energy of the fear, what are you going to create energetically? More fear. And you're going to go to defense, and you're not going to have your wisdom be able to shift that frequency of fear. So detachment is really key. Knowing that your sense of self does not have to be defined by the cancer, by the illness. It's not your fault. It's your solution to find. That's really, really important. You're not bad. You didn't do something awful. Yet you can find empowerment to heal it. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Wasn't there some pattern with anger, though, that you said you often see in people with chronic illness? I mean, I know that we've talked about this, that something with the anger.
Yeah. So anger is a very dense energy, and it can actually feed a chronic illness. I find people that have chronic illness don't necessarily have a balance with the issue of anger. They either never feel anger or they're overly reactive to anger. Like they yell at the driver when they're driving, you know, anger is either way on this side, excuse me, or way on this side. And that really messes up the energy system. Cancer can deal with not having enough space, depending upon the kind of cancer. And it's really important to learn how to read the consciousness of the cancer. What is the cause of it? Often, since cancer is often a tumor that takes up space in the body, may mean that you don't have enough space for you in your life, that you're taking care of too many others, or you're too busy, or you know you're run down so that there's no space for you in your life. Another hidden, awfully subconscious, depending on the personality type, feeding a negative belief that feeds chronic illness is sometimes we get ill because we want somebody to come in and save us. We want to be rescued subconsciously. You know, I tend to take care of everybody, da-da-da-da. You know, a lot of people in this profession do that. And when I had a cancer scare myself, I realized, wow, there's a part of me that just wanted to slow down and have somebody do something for me. And I had to really look at that, you know, and really transform that deep belief system. Chronic illness is really about the nervous system physiologically. So if you have chronic illness, chances are you should have a heart rate variability test to really understand what level of stress your nervous system's under. And a lot of chiropractors can do that test. You can probably Google online, or if you're in this area, I can give you names of people that can do a heart rate variability test. It's a good indicator of an immune system going awry. I really think the more I've been doing this about 20 years now, a long time. A lot of joy, physical happiness, relationship happiness is one, feeling safe in your body, having your nervous system feel safe and out of stress, and really aligned to feeling at home with your nervous system. In the certification training, you learn how to rewire somebody's nervous system to a higher level, that neurological replacement intervention you guys learn. That is one of the most powerful things, really learning how to work with your client's nervous system, track the nervous system, help bring it to a higher frequency of balance and groundedness, I think is essential if you're working with anybody with a chronic illness or a chronic mental health challenge like anxiety or depression or sleep issues. And almost everything, I think, if you want to simplify it, it comes down to, do you have a healthy nervous system? And is your sense of self defined by your wholeness or your false self? It's on one level, it's that simple and that difficult. Your mom was having some chronic illness issues. Do you want to talk a little bit about that specific issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've just been getting some insights while you've been talking, okay. Right? My grandmother actually died from, she was a smoker for like 40 or 50 years. So she didn't die of lung cancer, but she died of what they call COPD, which we used to call the emphysema. Right. So, and now my mom has had this like lung infection, bronchitis for like 8 weeks now, and there's a lot of fear. So it was interesting you were talking about that because I'm like, well, my grandmother died of this, and now suddenly my mom is having all these lung issues. Right. What's the bigger picture here? Because she's had many tests, and they're saying no, it's not COPD, it's not lung cancer, but still there's this chronic lung coughing and things coming up,
So emotionally, if you look at Chinese medicine, lungs deal with grief.
Wow.
And that's really a pivotal issue. Is it because grief can be about so many different things, right? It can be about who are you now? She's retired now. There's a new stage in her life. So lungs deal with grief. And the coupling organ, I'm trying to remember. What is the coupling organ for the lungs? The color is white. The sound to help heal the lungs is kind of like a snake. And so you can even give her that practice of going and feeling the lungs, thinking of the coupling organ, I think is the ears. I'll have to look it up and I'll post it to all of you.
I thought it was interesting because when you were talking about grief, and I realized with this timeline with my mom, all of her lung issues started after my grandma died. She wasn't having all these issues before my grandma died.
There's something to look at there. sometimes we can have trouble letting go, and establishing a new relationship with that person that has passed on. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so there's a way, can she let go of the physical form of the death? And what could a new relationship look like? One of the things I really got from studying with Barbara Brennan is when somebody transitions to death, from life to death, if their loved one is nearby, they can really receive wisdom from that person that moved on. So that would be a healthy way of connecting to somebody who moved on. What wisdom can you gain through that energetic connection to them? But how can you let go of holding on to them in the physical realms? Because it can create illness.
Right. And I was thinking too that it kind of does bring up that sense of rescue and someone to save us, because is there anything more profound than when your own parents die?
Right.
Because in that sense, you lose
Right.
those people who were kind of that rescue for the rescue for the child.
Right.
When the mom and the dad passed on, in the past 2 years, suddenly it's like it's just you, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. It's an interesting time. Interesting time. Depending on the relationship you have with your parents too, it can be much more complicated. Depending upon how healthy that relation. Are there unresolved issues? So, just to bring it back to full circle when we first started talking, if somebody's died that you're close to, are there unresolved issues that you need to work out in order to let go and move on, to accept and find the gift? And working through those unresolved issues can be the gift. Yeah. I know your grandmother had an interesting personality, so there might be some unresolved issues there, right?
Right? Well, I think this is a good time to wrap up and to share some of the links and the services that you provide, because these are really deep issues. And honestly, I think most people need support to navigate some of these challenges. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
And to not rewound in them and not recycle them. So yes, I'll send you all links to the certification training that starts. We have 4 or 5 more spaces left, so you need to sign up quickly. And I'd love to meet with you on Skype, on the phone, or in person if you're interested in the certification training. Tell you more about it.
I'm so excited because I'm helping out.
Yes. And if you're not in the area, or if you don't want to travel to Boulder, Colorado, then I do have the core of that certification training, the core coaching program, online, 14 modules. I'm hearing such amazing stories of transformation from people in the training right now. So you can have online support. If you're a new client, you can have 2 sessions for the price of 1. And you can sign up for that free 20-minute consult. So I'm sending love to everybody, and thank you, Heather, for joining. And I really don't want you guys to be abused and hurt by the challenges that are facing you. There is a map to freedom. There is a map to create a better way. And part of that map is understanding that that is an energetic construct. In this quantum reality, there are all sorts of vibrations, lower vibrations and higher vibrations. And I want to help empower you to shift the lower vibrations of consciousness in your mind, energy, and body systems and create a better reality. More joy, more health, more abundance, more love. I guess we could have talked a little bit more about that love topic, but we'll tune
Maybe
in
next
and
time.
we'll do it again. We'll do it again. I'm hearing you guys love this, so we'll keep doing that. You up to doing this again?
Oh yeah. We've got love addiction. We've got codependency. We've got sex addiction. We've got a whole
plenty of
topic
topics to cover.
Relationships, love. I think could be hours.
Yes. All right. Sending love and blessings to everybody, and signing off. Till next time. Blessings.